that system, that play system. And just playing this video, if you just watch these small ducklings, just repeating the process of going up the ramp, sliding down into the water, and then repeating it again. They're enjoying the whole system. They are enjoying the process. They're maybe not working together as such, but I would probably say that they're enjoying each other's company, and they're waiting in a queue while each one just slides down and then repeats that process. It is also important to note that play very much increases in low stress environments. So an animal that is more anxious or stressed, then play will start to decrease. There is, however, difficulties in defining play, mostly because it is very personal to that individual dog, animal. But if you look at the picture on this slide, you could look at that and say that you don't see a playing animal. You see more an anxious animal, maybe a threatening animal, maybe even aggression. But this is a dog that wants to play. We can tell by the behaviours, the eyes, the ears. So it's very difficult in a lot of cases, and it's easy for me because this is one of my dogs. The other thing is we all read behaviours differently. So if we were to play a video and then give it to 5 different people, each one of us would have a different way of looking at that video and seeing different behaviours. And with play itself, those sequences, they're very much flexible and they can change from second to second. But ultimately, play is very personal to that individual dog that we are interacting with. There is different ideas on the function of play. These can be to train for the unexpected and the unpredictable. It does play a major role in social development. So for young pups that maybe have not had the same access to play, maybe within a rehoming environment or even within a home environment, if they miss out on that play with both people and with their siblings or with their mum or even their dad, then again, that can affect their social development later on. It also provides a base for cooperation. So animals that, or dogs that have built a good play system between each other, then they will start to cooperate as a generalized rule. And when that happens, we start to see dogs that are able to diffuse an aggressive situation in the future. So their communication system starts to increase incredibly well when these cooperation types of systems start to have more experiences, I suppose is the easiest way to look at it. It also reinforces social bonds, and we know that, yes, we can use food when we're training, but I believe nothing will reinforce a social bond like play and good interaction. And play doesn't always involve toys. It can also involve tactile. I do play with my dogs without toys. They learn how to play without toys. And that means that I can learn to interact with them as they can learn to interact with me as well. So we both are able to play on each other's levels. It also enhances those motor abilities. We also see it with pups that have developed good play skills, then their problem-solving ability increases dramatically. They're able to work things out. And as I've already said, that communication without confrontation. In other words, if they are faced with an environment or a situation that could go one way or the other, and it could develop into potentially a threatening or an aggressive confrontation, then because of that previous skill level and that previous social development and that previous ability to be able to communicate effectively because of the play experiences, then those potential situations that could develop into aggression normally can be diffused very, very quickly. But how do we know it's play? And again, looking at these photographs, this is one of my dogs with a Malamute. The mirroring behaviour, this is play, but if we looked at that and we didn't know the background, we might think it was a threat that was involved, but it's not. Very much two dogs coming together and enjoying each other's company. But it does require familiarity and emotional security in a known safe environment. And what I mean by that is, we know that dogs who live in a family of other dogs or with people, then they will maybe play slightly more rigorously or in a way that we would term as more threatening. And if we take that out with, so that same dog moves outside that family environment and plays with a non-familiar dog, then the play will be slightly more controlled. It won't be as excessive. But it does differ from reality. It is fun, and we can see that through the way that the dog plays. We will see repeated behaviours, as we've already said, but both dogs will be relaxed. We will see them maybe playing in sometimes more physically, sometimes running in and running away, so they involve the chasing. It's very much those repeated processes, but we have to also remember, as we said earlier as well, is that it's very much an emotional response. So it is self-reinforcing to that individual animal, either if they're playing with another dog or they're playing with a person or a group of dogs. And as I already said, it's repetition. So there is different ways that they will communicate that they want to play, and that could be through the scent system. So olfactory, we sometimes see two dogs coming together and they will sniff around each other's mouths or ears or eyes. That generally is more the social areas, and we maybe see that the play will start as soon as those sniffs are done. So there might be a play bow, and then the play bow is done through that visual system. But we also might see an auditory system coming into play. So we do know that a much darker dog, so a dog that has got a lot of hair or is very dark around the face, then they might use more of an auditory signal to start play. And the reason for that is because they are much darker, then that system, the visual system, is taken away. Yes, they could maybe do a play bow, but there's a lot more to the visual system than just play bows. There is the eyes, there is the way the ears are held, the way the mouth is held. They're all very much visual cues to the other dog that the dog wants to play. So maybe there might be some barking. There might be some high yips that go on as well. The other thing that you might see is a tactile delivery of the play system. So the dog might come up and swipe the other dog with its back end. It might put a paw on its back. It might nudge it with its nose. So all these different ways of communication and the delivery of that play system or that play signal will then start that game off. It might not, because the action or signal might actually create the other dog to be slightly wary. So we also see, and I will talk about it slightly later on, and that different breeds play differently. So two collies will play differently than two Labradors. Two Labradors will be very much more physical, whereas collies will be much more non-physical, and they might just run round and enjoy chase. So we have to look at not only how dogs play, but also the breeds in certain individuals. There are three types of play that we see in dogs. You can maybe know of more and you maybe look at different ones, but there are these three main types that hopefully everything will fit into. So the first one is social play, and that's between two or more individuals. It could be interspecies, in other words, dog to dog, or it could be between a dog and a human, or sometimes even a dog and another species, such as a cat. I used to own a cat, and he would play with the dogs on the same level as the dogs. We also see object play, using toys or maybe picking up something outside. And again, very little research into play of this type because of that emotional background to it. And then we will talk a little bit about play fighting as well. And it has been said that it serves as a function of rehearsal for future combat. But again, this has started to change, but I thought I would just put that up because sometimes when we see dogs play fighting, we do see some behaviours that we think, oh, that's quite scary when we look at it, especially with terriers, when terriers start to play. So I'm going to play this video, and this is two completely different breed types, and two different breed types who will play differently, and I'll just talk you through the video as I play it. So we have a big wolfhound and a small terrier, and both individuals will generally play with different rules. So you will see that the bigger dog, he will start to self-handicap. So in other words, he will not be as physical, he won't run as fast. We're seeing toy play now, so toy play between the human, which is fantastic to see. And then the bigger dog will start to slow things down. He will hold the toy down at a level that the smaller dog can get to. So very much working together, and this is appropriate play. Even when the small terrier runs, the bigger dog will again self-handicap. He won't go as fast. What I do like about this video, the little terrier does cheat a little bit when the bigger dog's not looking, which you will see just in a minute. So as the bigger dog looks away, then the other one comes in. So this is, you can see how they enjoy playing together. You can also see that there is gaps in the play, there is little pauses in the play, they are using toys. The bigger dog, as I've said, is self-handicapping. So again, in other words, he is not using all his strength, his power. He is keeping it in check. So very much working together. So with object play, it allows an animal to explore different stimuli or different items within the environment. So they're going to check out, can I eat it? Do I ignore it, or do I play with it? So when a dog gets a new toy, you will probably see that it does very much explore that toy before it starts to play with it. It will maybe try and find a squeaker, and if it finds the squeaker, then that might increase behaviours, especially with a terrier. So a toy that does squeak is very much more, we would describe it as a killing toy. So in other words, the squeak might awaken that predatory behaviour in that dog, and then he will destroy the toy and pull the squeaker out. Again, some dogs might not be stimulated by that squeaker. They might enjoy squeaking it, but they won't do the same behaviour as a terrier would. It might involve pouncing, vocalising, guarding, and again, killing of toys. So that killing of toys is the ripping the toy up and pulling all the stuffing out. We might also see an increase in guarding with certain types of toys. So we have to be careful, and we have to be very much aware of the appropriate toys to use what we are trying to teach or what we are trying to play with regards to that individual dog. We'll also see those random behaviours. So ones that are linked to potentially predatory behaviour. So the killing of the toy, as I've said earlier, again, that ripping of the stuffing out of the toy. So we could say that that had some link to some sort of predatory behaviour. Other people might not. Mark Beckhoff has said that predatory behaviours are very much not part of play. When the play system comes in, then the predatory behaviours are not part of it. But again, that's another huge big discussion, and everybody will have different thoughts on that. So play fighting, as I've already said, terriers, when we watch terriers play, it is very much looking at that type of, we look at it and we see it as play, but we can also look at the photographs such as this and say, oh, is it play? So very much identical motor patterns used, but performed in different order. In other words, it's not a set order of predatory sequence. It is broken down, and there'll be pieces missing and other pieces put in. They might start at the end and then move back along that predatory sequence. So very much that whole random order when they start to play. And those repeated patterns again. And very much those inhibited bites. So when I do play with the dogs, my own dogs, then very much inhibited. They might hold my hand, they might hold at parts of me, but there will never, ever be any bites down. So again, the dog is learning how to inhibit, and the dog is learning how to control all those behaviours. So very much part of the play system. But we've got to remember that emotions can change from second to second. So we have 3 dogs here playing. We've got a dog that was brought in from Afghanistan, rescued from Afghanistan. The collie, the black and white, is mine, and the terrier is also mine. But you can see as the play changes slightly, the newer dog, she comes forward, and that then starts to worry the terrier. And that in turns then affects the other dog as well, the tan dog. So you can see how those behaviours can start to develop. They can play 1 minute, but then it can suddenly change. And this is where we have to learn to be very good referees. So if dogs are playing, then we should be working on a refereeing system. If we see emotions starting to increase negatively, then we start to call the dogs back to us, referee the situation, reinforce the dogs for coming back, and then allow them to go back to play. So we are very much making sure that behaviours don't increase in a negative fashion. So then going on to canine playstyles, and I have touched on this, but each dog or type of dog or breed of dog will have a specific playstyle. It is dependent on that breed, but it's also dependent on previous experience. So from everybody that's listening, we all see our dogs that will play differently, and they will be able to change their style of play due to experience. So if they've had good experiences and good social skills built, then they will be able to change their play style according to the dog that they're playing with. But sadly, we don't see that all the time. So we do see certain breeds that have a concern or a worry when they are playing with a more physical breed. So a less physical dog, such as a collie or any of the herding breeds, they might not want to play physical games, whereas a more physical style of dog like a Labrador or a Mastiff type, they are very, very much more into the physical types of games. Other dogs might want to use their mouths more, so they might want to do wrestling with their mouths, like Staffordshire Bull Terriers are very much more wrestling dogs with their mouths. They enjoy that, but they're also very good at self-handicapping. We have to also remember that the genetics create the potential and the environment and the opportunity. So certain dogs will play in a certain way because of their breed, but the environment will also help develop those skills appropriately. So if we look at a mixture of play styles with this video, there is 2 Great Danes, so Mastiff type dogs. They are playing one way, then a smaller dog comes in, desperate to join in, but doesn't, and then we will see a herding dog coming into the game as well. So there we've got play bows. We will see that the 2 dogs are evenly matched, so there will be good role reversal between the 2. They will change. One will go down, and the other one will then go on top of him, and then the other one will roll over. So they're chopping and changing their roles. You can see the small dog coming in, desperate to play, and there's what we call the fun police. So the fun police comes in. You can see that this dog is not comfortable. He's trying to break it up. So very much a typical herding breed. So he's worried about the situation. There's lip licks. You can see the eyes, the ear behaviour. The little guy, he's desperate to join in. And I always make a joke that the herding breed, he's off. He's saying, if this doesn't stop, I'm going to phone the police. I'm going to get the police in. And he then disappears. The herding breed disappears. You'll see it in a minute. My hound dog over here. So you can see the worry from that dog. You can see the worry in his face there, the eyes. Although the tail's moving back and forward, it's very stiff. Okay. So I'm just going to run it forward again. So the herding breed, you can still see him there. He's still coming in and out. Hello. And then he goes back out again. He disappears out of the room. But you can see the little dog, he is desperate to play. There he is there. Just a lot of worry. So just really to repeat that video, just to see the anxious behaviour that that dog is showing, because it's not a game system that he wants to be involved in. So appropriate play with other dogs. I use this photograph not because of play, but you can see the two dogs, they are not comfortable with how this dog is playing. Sorry, with how this cat was playing. Do apologise about that squeak, that's one of my dogs. So roles should be acceptable to both dogs. Very much so. So when we ask our dogs, or we allow our dogs to play, or we think that they are going to play, we have to make sure that each dog is comfortable. We might see that within our own home, but when we leave our own home and those dogs start to meet other dogs, then we have to be aware that we might have to be a referee, or we might have to control the situation as best we can to ensure our own dog is comfortable within that environment. We have to remember that healthy play self-interrupts. So like we saw in the video with the big dog and the terrier, the wolfhound and the terrier, there was loads of little interruptions, little pauses during the play that went on. We also have to remember, as I've said earlier, the correct and similar play styles. Again, we have not only got different breeds, but each of those breeds will have those different play styles that we have to be aware of. The physical space. Some dogs don't mind jumping on each other and enjoying that whole physical contact, but some dogs don't. So again, we have to be aware of that and ensure that that physical space is respected by both, and act as a referee if we see things starting to increase negatively. We also have to look for those relaxed and non-rigid behaviours when the animal's playing. They might roll over, they might jump back up again, but there will be a whole load of those relaxed types of behaviours that we see both in the body and also in the face. And ultimately it has to be enjoyable and fun for that individual or both individuals. I'm going to just play some of this video as well and just explain it. Now, that's Rune, one of my dogs that I'm holding. I'm just about to let him off the lead. And the little collie that is in the distance, we had, before I came in with Rune, the centre, the rehoming centre had tried 6 different dogs to try and get her to play. She wouldn't play with any of them and became quite aggressive, just being really, really worried. And when we went into the history, the dogs that were being used, the only ones that we had access to, were not ones that she was comfortable with. She'd come in from an area that she'd only ever known other collies. So we then planned to do this meet, and this was the 3rd meeting that we had with her. Again, I'll talk through it. So Rune was let go, and if you watch my own dog, he won't rush up to her. She comes in, but you can see the tail flag. The sniffing, again, is very much a displacement behaviour, so she's not comfortable. As he then approaches, she just immediately moves away. Again, the sniffing carries on. She's not comfortable. So I'm going to use a dog like Rune, who wants to play with a toy. He will give her space, he'll move away from her, and he will play quite comfortably with a toy. This then allows her to become comfortable in that environment because the other dog is not putting any pressure on her. And this has happened now, remember, for 2 previous occasions. Now, we did not know which way this was going to go. So if you just watch it there, Rune ran after the toy, but she ran in and he immediately will back off. He won't guard the toys, he'll just immediately back off and allow her to take that toy if she wanted to. So we throw the toy again. She then starts to change. Now you suddenly see these changes in this puppy type behaviour, that she's rushing in and then she rushes off. So again, she's now in a little bit of conflict. She's slightly worried, but there is also relaxation coming in, and the relaxation is coming in because the other dog, which is Rune, is not putting her under any pressure whatsoever. So just going to allow it to keep running. So now they're starting to sniff together. Rune moves away. Again, he just takes the pressure off her, but then he starts to move and he sees that he's going to go and sniff her, but again, she doesn't. And then it suddenly changes. And I can't answer why it happened. I just think it was comfortability. I think it was time. I think we used the right dog. And I think we chose to choose the right dog, and it took a little bit of time to work that out. But this is where the ears get sniffed, the eyes get sniffed, all those areas where the pheromones, those things that we spoke about earlier, those little scent patterns that come out. And this is where it all changed. So this was after 6 months of trying to mix it with other dogs, and we failed. We didn't think about it, and then we thought about her history and what dog she was comfortable with. And collies, she was a collie, he was a collie, so that communication system was known, and it was known well, and then this is how it ended up. The beauty of this was, 4 weeks later, we got her rehomed, because she then started to become more comfortable and generalise onto other dogs. And you can still see it's slightly rigid. It's not completely comfortable, but the two dogs are starting to develop a communication system through trust and through those games. And you can see the games themselves. When I spoke about it, there's not a lot of physical games. Even when there is slight amounts of physical, when she puts her paws around his neck, we noticed that it was just so delicate. There wasn't any force, no physical pressure at all. So it's a nice little story. The other thing that I just want to finish off looking at is dog-to-human play, and this is something that I think, in a lot of cases, certainly in the UK, is sadly missing from a lot of relationships. We allow other dogs to play with each other, or dogs enjoy playing with each other, but we actually forget to play with them ourselves. So successful dog-to-human play, it's all about that eye contact and focus from both players. The eye contact from the dog alternates between the toy and the human. So the dog will look at the toy, then look at the human, and it will move back and forward depending who's got the toy at that point. But even if the dog's holding it, the dog will still maintain that eye contact. And if the human's holding the toy, then again, the dog will just flick between the toy and the person. We see mirroring behaviours, running together, grabbing at toys, hand pushes if we're playing with the dog, play bows. Some of us will play bow at our dogs. Whether our dogs look at us and say, I'm not sure what that is, then we could talk about that. But certainly we see that mirroring behaviour, the running together and using toys, or maybe sometimes not using toys. But the other thing we have to remember is, as humans, we do have to self-handicap when we're playing with our dogs. We might tug harder, we might tug not so hard, depending on the dog, and depending what the dog enjoys to play. One of my dogs loves to play tug and likes a lot of physical contact with that. The other one doesn't, so he likes to chase a lot more. He will play small amounts of tug games, but they're kept very, very, very weak games. They're not fully physical. So play is very much personal. It's not about the winning. If we are playing tug games, it's about the taking part. A toy is just a medium to start a game. So a dog might lift a toy to get you to play with them, or we might lift a toy to get the dog to play with us. It's not about winning that toy. The toy is something that creates the game. It creates the contact. It also involves empathy. We've got to look at the dog and how he plays, and I'm pretty sure they look at us as well, and they're working it out. It's very much give and take, but it's fun for both. So in this video, you will see me playing tug. I made this video just very quickly for somebody who was asking about tug games. And when I use the cue to ask the dog to leave the toy, which is off, if he doesn't release the toy, I don't make a grab for the toy. I just let the toy go. Because as soon as I let the toy go, that's the game really finished, the contact finished. And you will see the dog's behaviour when that happens. And unfortunately, I'm very sorry, but that video is not going to play. Okay, I do apologise about that. I don't know why that video is not playing. So I'll try and explain it. As I'm playing with this dog, I ask him to let the toy go. He knows what off means. He knows it's leaving the toy, but he doesn't leave the toy. As soon as that happens and he doesn't leave the toy, I just drop the toy and immediately stop playing. The dog then will immediately understand that as a process, and he will drop the toy. We will then lift the toy again and we will start to play and repeat the process. So a lot of people, when they're playing with the dogs and they ask the dog to leave the toy, if the dog doesn't, they then try and remove the toy from the dog. My advice is don't. Just immediately stop the game and allow the dog to take the toy. If the game is appropriate and it works well, the dog will then understand and immediately leave the toy after that. I hope that makes sense. I do apologise about the video. This is another game video. This is a little terrier. This is Hodge, one of mine. And again, you will see him playing. You will see how we build up the impulse control. So when we ask him to leave it, which again is an off cue, we ask him to off, he immediately drops it. At the end of these games as well, we don't walk off with the toys. I generally just say, that will do, and the dog remains with the toy. The dog will, in most cases, just drop the toy. Remember, the toy is a medium for contact and communication. It's not, in a lot of cases, a trophy that the dog wins. So this is a brand new toy, and this dog will play very, very vigorously.
Okay.
So there's the cue to allow the dog to play, which is okay. Then we give the cue off for him to drop it. We keep the toy there. We don't pull it away from him.
Okay.
He's then allowed to interact again. And the cues should be given quietly. We don't need to use the cues really loud. They can be given quietly because the dog will listen harder. If we start to increase the volume on our cues, which sometimes we do because we haven't felt that he's heard it, then again, that doesn't really help with the process. And you can see the vigour from that dog, the enjoyment from the dog, that he's still listening. So just my last thought, we do not stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. The more we can play with our dogs, or the more that we can teach other people how to play appropriately with their dogs, then the better. Play is far more reinforcing for social bonds than a lot of other methods that we can use. If we do have play, we can use self-handicapping. The dog will use self-handicapping. We can role reverse. So 1 minute we are much weaker and then we're stronger, and the dog will understand that. We just need to watch how other dogs play with each other and then start to understand how we can then incorporate those play systems into our own play with our own dogs. Thank you very much. If anybody's got any questions, then please ask and I will help as much as I can.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. It was really informative. We do have quite a few questions for you. Some are more specific and some are general. So let's focus on the specifics. If you think that the answer is quite broad or you're not able to answer at this moment, feel free to skip over the answer, the questions.
Yep.
Okay, so let's start with the first one. Give me just a second to find it. Okay, how do I stop my dog, 4 months old, from jumping at me and biting me while we play? He doesn't bite me for real. It's more of a game for him, but it would be nice not to have any more bruises on my legs.
Okay, so probably my question is it the legs, is it the arms, which part of the body, I suppose. But if we just take it as a general, it depends on the reaction that you give the dog. Now, one of the ways that you can do it is to make sure that you keep the games with a toy as low level as possible. If the dog then does start to lunge forward or do anything, you've got to find a way. Now, some of the ways that I will do it is maybe keep the dog on a line, so on a lead, and just attach it to a collar. So as I'm playing with the dog, then if I feel the dog is going to come forward, then I'll just just take hold of the lead and just hold the dog in that position. Don't interact with the dog until the dog then goes into a calm state, then immediately produce the toy again and go back to playing. The one thing that the dog learns as soon as it starts to mouth at you, then we react. So in other words, what we do is we will react by maybe squealing or trying to push the dog away. And as soon as that happens, that might be reinforcing that behavior of coming forward. So some people will say scream or squeal when the dog mouths at you, but we have to remember that sometimes that will excite the dog even further. So try and remain calm and try and set the situation up where the dog can't do that behavior. The other way you can do it, and I have used this in the past, is have a gate between a doorway. A baby gate, is that something that people would know? So a gate that you would put as a barrier, and play with the dog through the barrier. So in other words, you're down and you're playing tug with the dog through the barrier, and as you can ask the dog to let the toy go. As he lets the toy go, then as soon as he goes into a calmer state, then you could use maybe a couple of bits of food and then invite the dog to play again. So there is a physical barrier between you and the dog. That again might help. Hopefully that answers it.
Okay, thank you, Al. Let's go on to the next one. My German Shepherd, 18 months old, plays with the bowl after she finishes eating. She starts barking loudly and constantly at the bowl, and she keeps pushing it around. Is that just playing, or what can I do? The neighbors are not really pleased with all that noise until I take out the bowl.
It goes back to the other one as well. What is the dog getting out of that? What do you normally do? Do you then come in and lift the bowl? Do you try and encourage the dog to leave the bowl? They might all be reinforcing that behavior that you don't want. If it's not that, the dog might just enjoy playing with the bowl. The dog just might have developed from a puppy where the bowl starts getting lifted and thrown about. So was the bowl getting thrown about? I can't remember. I know the dog was barking at the bowl. Was the bowl being thrown about?
Yes, it says that he's barking loudly and constantly at the bowl, and she keeps pushing it around. Okay.
So it certainly won't solve the barking. The other thing that you could do with that is once the dog is starting to finish, then immediately call the dog back and maybe start to interact with the dog in a different way. So the expectation changes from when the dog finishes, it then goes on to another behavior away from the food bowl. It could be a play with you, or it could be maybe just doing some simple exercises as well. But if you can do that, then it might give you time to defuse the situation for the dog then grabbing at the bowl or barking at the bowl.
Okay. Thank you, Al. Another one. Do you have any advice for Pomeranians? She is 2 months old, and I heard they are stubborn and want to be dominant, and they bark a lot. When I hold her, she wants to bite me for my nose.
Okay. I think when I hear every so often dogs are, I think we kind of class certain breeds as stubborn. I think these dogs are ones that we just haven't found out what they like. So you'll need to do a little bit of testing to find out what the dog enjoys. How does it like to play? How does it like to interact? What food types does it like? And once we actually find the payment system that the dog enjoys, then training will increase dramatically. But it's spending a little bit of time actually finding out what the dog likes. So a stubborn dog isn't really stubborn. It's just a dog that maybe likes particular things that we haven't found yet. So we could maybe, in human terms, we might say a person's stubborn because we've only offered them a small amount of money to do a job, whereas we find that person is not stubborn, we just haven't offered them the right amount of money to do that job appropriately. So if we think about it that way, it changes the way that we look at these behaviours or these dogs. If you find that the dog is biting at your nose as well, then I would really suggest not lifting the dog up or putting the dog in a position where it can bite at your nose. Try and train appropriate behaviours first. Spend a little bit of time spending on those appropriate behaviours, and then start to integrate the other stuff that you would like, such as a lifting up. But just try not to allow the dog to practice those behaviours.
Thank you, Al. The questions just keep pouring in, so I'm not sure we'll have time to answer all of those, but we'll go through a few more, and then the ones that are left behind, I'll send them to you in an email. You can answer them, and then we'll send them across to everyone, along with the video of this webinar. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely. I'll apologise. It's so difficult answering questions on people's own dogs because I don't know the dogs and I don't know this. So I'm trying to. It's just really first aid advice. So I do apologise. I can't go into it in a great detail.
That's fine. Thank you, Al. Okay, let's go through a few more and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
My dog, a mix, 5 years old, still doesn't know how to walk properly on a leash. As soon as we leave our neighborhood, she starts pulling and panting. And so it is every time we go somewhere. It's really exhausting.
Okay. Walking on a lead with the dog not pulling is I'm going to say a very difficult exercise to train. It does take a lot of time. What you could start to do is teach the dog that every second pace or every third pace or every fourth pace, make it very random, but don't do it any more than 5 paces, that the dog will get an interaction from you. It might be a bit of food. It might be a short game, but you change the expectation of the dog's focus in front to then turn to you. So you then become the provider of good stuff. The other thing that I also find really helpful, if the dog is playful, then have a toy on the end of a rope so that you're holding one end of the rope and the dog is holding the toy. So basically the dog is walking next to you because he is holding the toy in his mouth and you're having little short game sessions as you walk forward. Again, it's kind of difficult to give you an absolute answer, but certainly teaching a dog not to pull on a lead is a long process. It's not a quick process. So sometimes, again, it's just looking at how can I increase the dog walking next to me. You might have to look at a harness that there is a front clip on it as well, so the dog can't surge forward. But the other thing that I would look at is, why is the dog pulling forward? Sometimes, what is also said in the question, it sounds as if the dog is slightly anxious and worried as well, if he's panting, etc. But he might be panting because there's pressure on his neck. So it depends what you're walking him on, whether it be a harness or a collar. If he's panting because he's walking on a collar, I would change him to a harness and clip him to the front of the harness.
Thank you, Al. We'll have another one and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Okay. We adopted a dog 6 months ago. It's a Wesley Terrier, 9 years old. He's very calm, except with other male dogs in our home, but he's afraid of a lot of things, including toys. Do you have any advice?
Okay. Okay, repeat, there's quite a bit to that. Repeat, just, can you repeat
Yes.
that?
So it's an adopted dog. They adopted it 6 months ago. It's a Wesley Terrier, 9 years old. Very calm, but very aggressive with other males. He's afraid of a lot of things, including toys. Do you have any advice?
Okay. We'll start off with the toys. The aggression one, I can't really I can't give a lot of advice on that. But certainly with the toys, have you tried, or what I would try is a toy in the end of a long line, a light line, and put a toy that maybe has food inside it. You can use, there is certain toys that have got little zips on them or Velcro, so you can put some food in that and gently just drag it along the floor. As soon as the dog pays any attention to it, rush over, open it and give the dog a piece of food. So what you're starting off is creating an interest in that toy that the dog says there could be food in that. Move it along the floor, dog pounces on it, open it up, give the dog a piece of food and develop it that way. The reason that I use a long line, so a long piece of rope on a toy, a lot of dogs or some dogs or certain dogs might not play if they are very close to you because the pressure's too much for them. Whereas if you have a long piece of rope on a toy that is 20 feet or even 30 feet or 10 feet long, you take the pressure off that dog and you can gently move up and down the line, taking the pressure off the dog or putting the pressure on. When the dog then starts to even make a grab at the toy, then praise, whatever else that might help to increase that behaviour. And that's the way I would start off to try and get a dog to play. There's a lot of assessments we do to actually try and find out what the dog enjoys in play, how does it like to play. So I think we take it that most dogs like to play, but that's not always the case. So it very much is working on assessments to try and test things to see how you can develop that play.
Okay, Al, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. There's a lot more questions, but we're going to take too much time. So since this presentation is being recorded, I'll send you the questions. And when you have the time, and once you do answer, we'll send them, everybody who's participated today, we'll send them the links and answers to your questions.
Okay, I'll also add, I've got a lot of videos on YouTube as well on Play, so there might be little systems in there as well that could help. So,
do you mind sharing the link with us?
I will do. Yep, I will get the link to you. Yep.
Okay, you're welcome to stay for the second part of the webinar, and then you can copy and paste the link into the chat if you like.
That'd be great. Yep.
Al, again, thank you very much. This is very, very informative. Thank you so much.